Hey, Sven here. The year 2025 is really the year of agents, as has already been discussed in countless videos, documentaries, and discussions for at least over half a year. And it's also the case that next week, Make will be releasing an agent module as well. I haven't seen it myself yet. It's currently still in closed beta. But what I wanted to do in this video is to introduce you to a very generic concept and a framework for how a simple agent system can be structured without using any specific products or features. There are so many new agent systems coming onto the market every day that it's incredibly difficult to both keep up and to decide on any particular technology. Once you've settled on one, it's difficult to switch away from it. That's why I always try to standardize things, to break them down into general concepts so that I can swap out elements as needed. I'm Sven, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've been working with quality and process optimization for over 30 years, not just in the business world, but in all other areas of life as well. Everything I know and can do today, I've learned through experience, and a lot of it through trial and error, so I know what really works. In my videos, I want to show you how you can use intelligent process automation profitably for yourself and your business. But let's take a look at what I've come up with here. I've sketched it out in this picture. Specifically, I communicate with a social media agent system that I built for myself. And I communicate through a Slack channel. But it could also be a Telegram bot or any other communication channel. The main thing is that I have something that allows me to communicate better with the agent system. Everything I write here is then received by an orchestrator. It's like a conductor, which is why it's called an orchestrator. And this orchestrator is nothing more than an OpenAI assistant. This assistant is able to process the request here and then decide which of the assigned agents it will call for each specific task. And this is a very simple example here. One agent writes a post, another generates an image, and another actually publishes a LinkedIn post. And as you can see here, ... I could add any agents I want. For example, Instagram and Facebook agents that would also make the post. Now, of course, you might say, I could do all of this with a scenario in Make. Yes, I can. And that's exactly how I implemented it in my content marketing machine. But here, the point is more about saying that these individual elements, these agents you see down here, can operate independently of each other, and that I can reuse them in any way I want within such networks. Additionally, I can swap them out. For example, at the moment for this image generator, I'm using Flux 1.1, but now maybe you saw last week the new version of ChatGPT with image generation, which is fantastic. I could simply replace this agent here, and the system as a whole would remain untouched, but the individual subtasks would then be handled by different agents, or I could add more and decide, please use this one or use the other. How is the whole thing structured? So I have this Slack channel here, which I just called Agent Demo for now. And in this Slack channel, that's where I communicate with the agent. Then I have the receiver, which handles these requests and the communication. That's actually this new message in Slack here. I'll get to what I need this for later. This is where the orchestrator is called and then receives the responses. From here, I can't actually see what it does, and then it sends the response back to the channel. And in case there's any kind of error, I've also built in an error route here. I'll go into more detail on that later as well. This agent orchestrator, as I already mentioned, is an assistant, an OpenAI assistant. And basically, all the logic and intelligence is contained here. And this orchestrator can then initiate a call to one of the 3 subordinate agents, such as those available here. These are each small scenarios, and all of them are triggered via a webhook endpoint. So in this case, the image generator is called via the webhook, writes a prompt, then creates a new image using Flux, and then returns the URL for this image through the webhook via the webhook response. So that I simply return here the result of this download function from Flux as expected, in fact. The second, or rather the first system, is even smaller. It only involves calling the orchestrator, writing a LinkedIn post, and then returning the text. And the third is that here I also have a small agent whose sole task is either to publish a plain post text on LinkedIn or to download the image and then publish an image post text. So if we look at the diagram again, communication happens via Slack. The orchestrator is called. It decides who should do what, and the result is then sent back to the Slack channel. This way, for example, I can say, well, I want to review it before it gets published. So on the one hand, there's a human in the loop, and on the other hand, I actually retain control over what happens at all. What does this assistant look like? We have two things here. First, a detailed prompt. And you can actually create this prompt with the help of JGPT by first generally stating what it's about. I've done everything here in English, but of course it's also possible in German. So you are a social media assistant who helps the user and so on, and also guides them through this process. And most importantly, you act as an intelligent orchestrator for available tools, so-called agents. And it also says here, your main task is to guide the user through this. But if they want something outside of the strictly defined process, you should still handle it. So don't be narrow-minded and only do what's written here, but also go a bit beyond that. Then I describe the workflow here, and the workflow is really quite simple. So the user specifies a topic, and then it says here, call LinkedIn copywriter agent. I'll get back to what that means in just a moment. So I instructed, if the user wants to write a post, don't write the post here as a prompt, but instead call the LinkedIn copywriter agent, then return the text and ask whether the text is okay or if it should be adjusted. Then, if the user responds positively, it continues. For example here, would you like me to generate an image for it as well? If the user wants an image, then call the Flux agent, return the URL here, and then it should again ask whether the user is satisfied with the result. If so, then it asks whether the whole thing should be posted as well. This way, the user always retains control over the entire process. And if they agree, the result is posted via the LinkedIn post agent. Afterwards, it can ask again, would you like anything else? Down here, various rules are now being defined. So first of all, always check if there is an agent you can call that can handle this request. If not, then take care of it yourself. And if yes, there are currently these three agents. And now you can see, if I were to add a Facebook agent, it would simply be another line in here. The LinkedIn copywriter agent is for writing or improving the LinkedIn post. The Flux agent creates the images, the LinkedIn agent posts the result, and then there are a few other rules here as well. The user could start the process anywhere. Always follow the standard logic specified here. Accept short confirmations as approval, meaning yes, it's okay, continue with the process. And ask follow-up questions if anything is unclear. You can certainly make suggestions as well, but the user should always remain in control. And yes, as it already says here, you may be extended with new agents. And down here, there's a bit more. So how should it generally behave? All right, but now back to these three agents that are supposed to be called here. These agents, and this is the reason why I use or have to use an assistant here. These are functions that I can add here in the assistant configuration, these agents. Let's just take a look at it. These are three functions. So I just click on plus function, and then I have some code here that's inside. And this code is a JSON document. This code describes how this agent is to be called. So on the one hand, what does the agent do? Or rather, first of all, what is the agent called? LinkedIn copywriter. What does it do then? This is the instruction that these parameters which follow now must be followed exactly. Then comes the parameter list, and basically it only contains this topic. And this topic is called topic use for the LinkedIn post, and there are no additional properties. And here it also says that the topic is definitely required. In other words, it's necessary in order to execute it at all. You can also have this code generated for you by ChatGPT itself. But once you've understood this structure, you can simply reuse it with copy and paste. I did the same thing here with the Flux agent. This, for example, basically looks pretty much the same. Here, again, we have the post, but in this case, it's the post text that's used to generate the image. And if we now look at the LinkedIn agent, it's a bit longer because here we have the text that is supposed to be posted and possibly the URL of an image. But here, for example, under required, it only says text because it might be that I don't want to add an image. So far, so good. So that means these three functions are then called via these instructions, and that in turn enables the agent orchestrator to call these sub-scenarios. Let's take a look at how that works now. Let's go back into the agent, which means here I have message and assistant. This message and assistant is exactly what actually calls this assistant from the platform. And as you may have seen with other modules in Make, as soon as I select this agent here, the functions defined there are automatically listed. That means I don't have to do anything for that. They are displayed here automatically. If I were to add a fourth function, it would appear here just the same. And then all I have to do is provide the URL of the webhook here. That means the agent now knows that when I need to call the LinkedIn copywriter agent, it will trigger this webhook. And this webhook, as you can probably guess, is the one that was defined here. The webhook is triggered, the scenario is executed, and then, as I mentioned earlier, the post text from this ChatGPT module is simply returned. And here, I really haven't done anything special. All the prompts and so on, they're really not particularly complicated. You can see it's a bit longer, but there's nothing special about it. It's simply for demonstration purposes, and of course, any functions can now be included in the prompt here. As for the image generator, it's a bit more detailed, but I've already shown how that works in various other videos. In the end, it's really just about the fact that there's an API key in there. Then a prompt is generated from the image, which I then use again. The prompt is generated from the text, which I then use to generate the image. So create a prompt, a photorealistic image, create a prompt that I can then use to generate the image. I have to make sure the prompt is safe so that it doesn't cause an error message, and then using Flux, the image is generated. I've also set it here to 16.9 JPEG and so on. Then the URL is specifically determined here, and it is returned at the very end of the scenario, just as described earlier. And last but certainly not least, as I just showed you a moment ago, the LinkedIn agent is then carefully invoked. If it's just text, then only the text itself is posted to LinkedIn and nothing else at all, as you can clearly see. If it's an image, the image is downloaded here via the URL and an image post is made, and the response is then nothing more, just the start of the 200, which means everything is okay. So that's the system. And now let's go ahead and actually try it out. Normally, I would just set all of these scenarios to immediately, but in this particular case, I want to clearly demonstrate how it actually works in practice. That's exactly why I'm actually running all of them manually right now, one by one, so you can see the process step by step. But I'll start them all up. And also the orchestrator. Zach. So they're all running. And if I now go into the Slack channel and enter something there, this scenario will be triggered. It will call the orchestrator, and then we'll see what happens. So I go in here and say, go now create a post about AI agents. And then I press enter. There, it's already been triggered. You can see the orchestrator is already running now. And the orchestrator now decides whether it needs to call one of the others. And you can see the LinkedIn post is already running in the background here. It has already been returned. The orchestrator is now just waiting for the result, posts it in the Slack channel, and that's it. So here you can see it has now come into the Slack channel. Here's the text suggestion. This text here comes from the orchestrator. This also comes from the orchestrator. And what was in between, that's the result from the LinkedIn agent. Let's take a look inside. Result says we navigate and so on. And in fact, here we now have exactly this text, and the surrounding parts come from the orchestrator. And now it says, are you satisfied with this text, or should I adjust something? We'll keep it really simple now. Namely, we'll say, I have to start it again. Okay, I'll get to that in a moment. Now, I just need to explain something briefly here. Namely, this module is always waiting to see if any message has been posted in the Slack channel. And posting the answer generates such an event again, and that's why I actually have to respond to it accordingly. And if I start it here now, use existing data, then it ends immediately because I set a filter here and said, if the bot is myself, meaning this one here, then the work in this scenario is already done. Because I don't want to answer my own question or my own answer again. That would put me in an endless loop. That's why I really have to make sure here that the scenario doesn't run through. And if I start it again now, it runs again because the queue has been cleared out again. So let's also start the LinkedIn agent once more. But it won't really be needed anymore because honestly, I'm just going to say, the post is absolutely fine. Thank you very much. Zach, let's go back in here. So the orchestrator is running again. And now theoretically, Flex should be called. No, sorry, what am I even saying? Of course it doesn't get called because it realized that I said I was satisfied. So it asks me, would you like me to generate an image for this post? All right. And now I have to start the whole thing again. Now we have our own response again. So, and now I say, yes, please. And now the Flex generator has to be called. Let's go in here. It's already running. It will run for 20 seconds now until it's done. And in the meantime, I'll explain what else I've done here. You have to think of it like this. You know ChatGPT, when you interact with it directly, actually in ChatGPT itself, you always have the context. That means everything you've discussed with it, all the previous messages that have been exchanged, it has in its context. That means he knows what was said before. This assistant doesn't know that. That means for it, every request is a new chat. And that's why I can't respond here and say, oh, you just got the post text. Do you want to create an image for it now? That doesn't work because it doesn't know, it has no idea that this image, that the text was created beforehand. But the crucial thing is, in ChatGPT, there is what's called a thread, basically a conversation thread, you could say. And that's essentially what you know from ChatGPT when you chat with it normally. That means everything that's actually communicated within this one dialogue, it knows. And now with such an assistant, I can give it the so-called thread ID that is the unique ID of this chat. And we can see that down here, namely this thread ID, which is generated for me by the assistant. That means when a new chat is started, a thread ID is created. And if I provide it with this thread ID, it essentially continues the previous dialogue and therefore retains the context. And I have to remember this thread ID somehow because the scenario we're looking at here is also something it doesn't inherently know. And for that, I now use the data store The data store is simply a module, a basic database from Make. And here it's just that I say I have created a record here, namely these agents thread tracker, and it has two fields, the channel ID, which is the channel ID from the Slack channel, and the thread ID, which is exactly the ID that is returned to me here by the assistant. So you can find it here, you can see it. And this thread ID, that's the reference, and I save it in the database. And when I call it up the next time, I select this entry here, and I can filter it using the channel ID. That means if I were to have conversations in different channels, they would of course have different dialogues, and this way I can save them accordingly. Okay, so the message comes in, I check, is there a conversation from the past that I want to continue here? If so, I read this thread ID, pass it to the assistant, who then knows where the current conversation belongs. And if it's the first time, it gets saved in this data store. And in the data store, it looks like this. There's a unique key, a channel ID and a thread ID. And if I refresh this now, you'll see that this one entry is actually in there. At the beginning, the thing was basically empty, and now I have this one entry in here. Here you can see this is the channel ID from the Slack channel, and this is the thread ID from ChatGPT. Okay, so in the meantime, the Flax agent is finished running. And in our Slack channel, we have, here is the image I generated for your post. Then I have the link here. Are you satisfied with this image, or should I generate another one? Then I say, yes, the image is okay. Now I have to manually start all my agents again here as well. And now, of course, you have to imagine everything would run much, much more smoothly if I didn't always have to start it manually. This is really just for demonstration purposes here. So, and now we still need to somehow, I'll go in here now and we'll wait until the response comes. The orchestrator is running again now, and it sees, okay, he doesn't want anything else. So now I'll probably ask whether you actually want to publish the image, or rather the post, on LinkedIn. So, and now he's asking me, would you like me to publish this post for you on LinkedIn? I've already opened my LinkedIn here, and I'm in the activity section because I want to delete this entry right away since I haven't checked it at all. That means I'm starting the agent again. The message I sent is intercepted again. Now it's running again. The LinkedIn agent is also running, and then I go into my Slack and say, yes, please. And now we'll see that the orchestrator is running again, going down here into this path for the LinkedIn post. There it is already. Okay, I still have some kind of error here. Webhook response. These are your parameter statuses. Okay, maybe I entered something wrong here, but basically you can see the LinkedIn post went through. That means here on LinkedIn, if I refresh, this new post should now have been published. There it is already. You see, that's it with navigate and the corresponding image. And now I'm going to delete the whole thing again. Okay, good. So I'll still need to fix that one error. We'll have to take another look at it here. But for the overall concept, it's not particularly important right now. And I think with this concept, you can actually implement such an idea using just the built-in tools. Of course, I'm really curious to see what will actually happen next week in April when Make releases this new agent module. Maybe it's like I said, I don't know yet. Maybe it's just an orchestrator, a kind of central controller that can call up and manage various sub-scenarios as needed. And perhaps it even includes the intelligence and smart features I've built into this assistant right here, making it much easier and more convenient for Make developers to set up and configure such agent systems. So think about whether you'd like to try out such an agent system yourself. If so, just watch the video calmly, step by step. That's also why today's video turned out a bit longer, because I think there are a lot of concepts you need to understand first before you can actually put them into practice. Have fun with it and see you next time. Bye.